the Golf Mom Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Nicole. I'm a golf mom, my son's caddy, and a mindset mentor in training. This podcast is for parents, junior golfers, and business owners in the golf space who support youth development. We explore the highs and lows and life lessons of raising junior golfers both on and off the course. We dive deep into the mental mindset, resilience, confidence, and family balance that comes along with this game. Each week, I bring you conversations with parents, junior golfers, coaches, mindset mentors, and golf industry leaders, all who are shaping the future of junior golfers by offering practical tools, encouragement, inspiration, and even products to help young athletes thrive both on and off the course. You can catch the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and watch us on YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Instagram for daily motivational content, and you can shop our Amazon storefront with all of our recommended golf products. We'd like to give a big thank you to our affiliate partners, Shipsticks, Fireaway Tea, Fly a Flag, Turtlebacks, Pins and Aces, and Scony. We have exclusive listener discounts in our show notes. Affiliate links may earn commission at no extra cost to you. And for all of our links, be sure to check out our show notes, the link in bio on our Instagram, or you can find us on golfmommindset.com. Today, I'm excited to welcome Kathryn Hosch to the show, a head women's golf coach at Cal State Fullerton. She has been shaping collegiate golfers for over a decade. She was recruited to play golf at Cal State Fullerton in 2009 under former LPGA player Pearl Sin Bahani and played there from 2010 to 2012. After earning her degree in kinesiology and graduate degree, she then stepped into the head coach role in 2017, a position she's held ever since. On today's episode, Kathryn will share her expertise, what it takes for junior golfers to play at the Division I level, how to evaluate college golf programs, and ways being a mom has now influenced her coaching philosophy. We'll talk about practice strategies, tournament preparation, parental involvement, and so much more. And with that, please welcome Kathryn to the show. Kathryn, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here. And
thank you so much for having me.
well, I know that this is going to be an interesting podcast with your insight from being a player yourself to now a coach and also a mom. You kind of are the triple threat. You have all three things that really are going to make for a great conversation. So I'd first like to start off by jumping in and asking about when you were recruited to play for Cal State Fullerton, what that experience was like, how it shaped you.
Yeah, so I grew up about an hour and a half away from Cal State Fullerton in Riverside County, and golf was just something that we did as a family. And I was actually I played different sports in high school. I did track and field, but I also did golf, and I started realizing that golf was going to be my avenue to get to college. But it's kind of ironic because looking back, as much as I do a lot of recruiting nowadays and scouting players, I actually didn't know how the recruiting process worked. So I went to a community college for the first 2 years out of high school, and I actually played on the men's golf team for a year, and then they made a women's golf team after that. And so I played 1 year on the men's golf team, 1 year on the women's golf team. And during that experience, I got recruited at Cal State Fullerton by our former head coach was Pearl Sin Bonani, I had no idea her achievements when she was recruiting me. If I did, I probably would have been very intimidated, but she was kind of like the Rose Zhang of her time, a number one amateur when she was younger. And so she recruited me, and I played under her for 2 years. And Cal State Fullerton at the time was a new program. So we were just getting started. And after playing 2 years, I was able to become the women's assistant coach and also get my graduate degree, which I have my bachelor's and my master's in kinesiology, which is nice. It helps with coaching a lot. Use it every day. And then after coaching as an assistant coach for 5 years under Pearl, she retired and I became the interim head coach for a year and then the head coach after that. So I really essentially never left. After I got recruited at Cal State Fullerton, I never left. And I'm still here to this day.
Amazing. Well, you must have had a feeling of home the moment you got there.
Yes. It checked a lot of boxes and it worked out really well.
That's awesome. Talk to me a little bit more about Pearl as your coach, and you
Mhm,
just mentioned, her extensive resume and everything. What were
mhm.
maybe a couple things that stood out that she taught you as a coach, and then also the second would be what she taught you once you became a coach.
Yeah, it was nice to have Pearl as our head coach. Just you have instant buy-in because you know that she's been there and done that, and she's played at the highest level. She's won some of the biggest amateur events, the USGA Amateur. She won the USGA Public Links when she was before she was in professional, and then when she turned professional, she won once on the LPGA. So she had quite the resume. But there was things that I learned from her both as a player, but as a coach, that helped me today and just having systems and just knowing all the stuff that you can't really learn, on your own or through equipment and stuff like that. So
I want to touch on too. I know you mentioned when you were at the community college, you were on the men's team. What was that like? And was there a difference playing with men compared to women, or?
yeah, actually I really enjoyed playing on the men's team. In fact, my brother was also on the men's team as well. So that was also really fun. The guys are definitely built different than the females, I feel like, not just physically, but they're a little bit more hot-headed, I would say, than some of the girls. So sometimes I learn a few bad habits too by playing with the men's team, if I'm being honest. But a lot of grit. Like I'll never forget the first time I played. It was our first tournament in college, and we were playing, and it was raining and rain. I mean, in fact, I'm surprised they to this day they didn't call it because there was literally rivers going through the green, and it was so wet. But I was like, they just kept playing, and nobody complained. So I learned a lot when I played with the men's team, and obviously, like our home course was 7,100 yards, which is unheard of. Like we've never played that even at the Division 1 women's
Right.
level. And so I got really good at, my short game got a lot better because it's, when you're playing those distances, it's pretty difficult. But, when they told me that they were going to start the women's program, I was actually a little bit bummed because I really enjoyed playing on the men's team. But I think in the long run, it was better.
Sure. Well, it probably gave you, like you said, an extra boost to be able to play because you're used to bigger
Yeah,
yardages, all of that.
sure. Got a lot of confidence. Yes.
Yeah. After graduation, you transitioned into coaching while completing your graduate degree. What was the shift like moving from player to then coach and mentor?
Yeah. That is a difficult transition. And I'm actually kind of reliving it right now because my current assistant coach was a player um, just last year. And so as I'm trying to help her guide through um, that avenue, I kind of reflect back and go, that's right. I remember feeling this way. It's like, well, we used to be friends and now you're my coach. And so that was a little bit of a difficult transition. What I have found when I was an assistant coach and even now as a head coach and things that I now help when I mentor my current assistant coach is just her and I are a team. It's kind of like mom and dad. Like we have to be together and united, and I communicate a lot with my assistant coach, and Pearl did the same thing with me as well. And as long as we're on the same page, we are like now are like we have to be best friends. And I know that there is kind of this a little bit of a separation that has to happen in a way with
Mhm.
the former players. However, my assistant coach has done a great job with that, with regards to transitioning into that spot. But, it's a really difficult people don't really realize this, but being an assistant coach can be really difficult because sometimes you end up being a middleman between the head coach and the players, and which is I actually love that for my
Right.
assistant coaches because there is things that maybe they want to tell that assistant coach that they're not ready to tell the head coach yet. And as head coach, I understand that, and I give them that space to let them filter it through my assistant and
Mhm.
maybe talk it out, and then my assistant will kind of maybe bring that topic to me, or maybe it doesn't need to be brought up, or whatever. So it's a difficult task, but like I said, Lindley has done a great job. That's my assistant, Lindley, with that role.
That's awesome. And I
Yeah,
think to your point, like having the experience of knowing that they need kind of that outlet and a buffer or middleman
yeah,
helps you accept it where maybe some coaches would be like, why didn't you come to me and be upset
yes,
or feel
exactly.
like a power struggle or something? But it's like
Mm-hmm.
you actually understand it because you've
Yes,
literally been in every single role,
yes.
in terms of that. Mhm.
And to add on to that, and this is why I'm so excited to be on this podcast because, well, and we'll probably get into it, but when it said golf mom, I mean, I feel like out of you talked about the three, I guess, jobs or tasks that I've done. I've been a player, I've been a coach, and now I'm a mom. By far, I think the mom is probably the hardest one out of all those. But when I became a mom, ironically, Lindley, my assistant coach, she had just joined our team. And I remember, it's funny, and it's a story I tell that, look, a lot of moms would kind of think that's kind of strange. But when I found out I was pregnant, I cried, but it was more like, not so much of the tears of joy that most moms would. It was more like I knew things were going to change. My
Mhm.
life is changing. And I didn't know if I was going to be as good of a coach as I once was because those kids or my
Mhm.
team is my kids. And now I have real kids. And so what ended up happening is I had to let go of being, a micromanager at that time. And so Lindley had just joined the team and I had just became pregnant. I didn't even tell her when I recruited her that I was about to give birth, which I felt bad. She got to the team was like, wait, what? And
She's
I was
jumping right in.
present. Yeah. But
Over.
it was such a beautiful thing because what ended up happening was I had to let go of control, and she ended up being kind of this undeclared captain, which
Mhm.
really helped her leadership skills. And same with my assistant coach, who is now, by the way, the head coach of UC Irvine. She became someone who had to step up, and because I couldn't do it all, and I had to delegate. So being a mom has really helped me become a better coach in that regard because it's allowed others to step up and become leaders.
Well, and I think too, even just with time management, as you know, it's like you have less hours in the day to get everything done before. So do you feel like that's also just helped you apply to your work ethic too?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, there is a saying, if you need something done, find a mom and they'll get it done. And I feel like that is kind of true. Sometimes I look back on the days when I was a younger coach and I didn't have a mom and I wasn't a mom yet. And I kind of think, what was I doing with all my time? Because I thought I was busy then. Now I'm really busy.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
you know what I mean?
I can relate because, yeah, same. I mean, when I was in my 20s and young and single, I thought I was so busy and I was busy. And now I'm like, that wasn't even busy. That wasn't even busy, right?
No, but I know that there's a really good book, written by John Maxwell. He's a big leadership guy, and, it's called, Growing Your Capacity, and, I read that many years ago, but it couldn't be more true because it's just like, when a freshman comes in to our school and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's a lot. We got class and this," and they're
Yeah.
taking the easiest classes. They're taking the general ed classes, and they're overwhelmed. The senior's
Mhm.
looking over like, "You gotta be kidding me, right?" Like,
You
that's
have
the
it
easy
easy.
part. So it's just part of life. You just get better at managing and balancing it all. And, I'm sure in 5 years I'll look back and say that was easy too. When so
Do you feel like now that you have, well, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, do you feel like the second time around with a newborn and last year has been easier because you knew what to expect?
yes, definitely. From the very start, everything has been a little bit easier with the second child. However, now I have two child. So it's harder, but I knew what to expect.
Yeah.
And again, ironically, since I've had now two, ch- now I have two kids, and again, I gave birth last November, and we had the most success on our team, which kind of doesn't make sense, right? Because you're thinking, well, you're going to be sidetracked, you're not going to be able to be as good of a coach, and we had our best year yet. So I think it's just you're getting really good at prioritizing what's important, but yeah, I'm. It's a challenge, but I think I yeah
How do
handled
you,
it.
because with your role, I'm sure there's a lot of early mornings, late nights, and traveling. How do you juggle that with being a mom? There's no one right answer of to what setup that looks like. So I think
Yeah,
getting advice of how you're managing all might help some other moms out there.
yeah, I know there really isn't a perfect way to go about it, but what we found pretty helpful is we're also very fortunate. So, number one, my mother-in-law lives down the street. That's actually why we bought the house that we're currently in,
Okay.
which was a total fixer-upper, by the way. So that was a whole other thing. When my first child, we bought a fixer-upper home. So we were fixing up a house and
Oh,
new
wow.
parents and all that. So, but
It's a
we bought
lot.
that house. So we do have help, family help. My mother-in-law helps about every other day and on the afternoons. And then to close up that gap with childcare, I hire a babysitter who comes in when I'm at practice, and she does a great job. And she's in the mornings, and my mother-in-law's in the afternoons, and that's kind of how we do that. And then, because there's certainly no way my husband could take our kids to work. That in his profession, that just doesn't work. So, he's obviously when I travel. which is, we leave on a Saturday and then we come back on a Tuesday. Luckily, it's mostly on a weekend. So he's able to be there when I'm gone. But when I'm, on a Monday, on a Tuesday, you might have to take work off or figure out a way to work from home or something like that. But it's a mess. It's not perfect. There's a lot of times that's a big struggle, obviously, to figure all that out. But that is how we're managing to do it right now. Yeah, we usually know our schedule about a year in advance. So
Okay,
my
that's good.
husband has a good idea. It's like, okay, I'm going to be gone these days. So he's already like preparing through his work, how he can manage and shift days to make that work. But yeah, and towards postseason, sometimes you don't know if you're going to advance. Or like last year, we won our conference, we advanced regionals, which wasn't too surprising. We knew that could happen. What we weren't really expecting, I wouldn't say we weren't expecting it. We knew we could do it, but it was a kind of a cherry on top is when we went to nationals. So like, Jason, I need you, we're going to be gone for another week again. Luckily, nationals for Division I happens to be in Southern California. So we're lucky in that regard. Yeah, there's sometimes we do get short notice.
Sure. Well, it's great that you have family support, outside help, and like you said, as moms, we just figure out a way to make it work, right? And you call in the troops, and it takes a village, but
Yes, it does.
you make it happen, and you become resilient from it, right? As head coach, what is the question you get asked most often by aspiring Division I athletes?
Yes. So this is we get these questions all the time, but one of the most common questions we get from parents is, what do I need to do to get my child prepared for playing at the Division I level? And it kind of, this question can vary depending on their age, but, I'm a big believer in letting your child play other sports, especially in elementary and middle school age. I think it's a good thing. In fact, there's even research that shows that if they play multiple sports, they're less likely to get injured because golf is it's a sport that's very repetitive, and it's good to use other muscle groups as well. So I am a big believer in playing other sports. In fact, we have found a lot of success in our players who have a background in other sports as well. And I also feel like long term, you'll find less burnout as well.
Right.
It's hard to believe that maybe now because they love golf and this and that, but we see it because we get them at age 18 and we can kind of see if they're excited about it or they're kind of over it. Maybe their mom or dad has pushed them a lot. So definitely let them play other sports. And when they are in high school, they can start to narrow their focus in golf. I think one of the big check marks you'd want to be doing, especially when they get into high school, is to start playing a lot of competitive golf. And it doesn't have to be necessarily expensive tournaments. I know like there are some tours that are a little more expensive than others. It's not necessarily about what tour to play in, because people ask me that question a lot. It's more about what kind of tournament is it? Is it an 18-hole tournament or is it a 36 or 54-hole tournament? You kind of want a tournament that has multiple rounds in it. You want to look at the course length for Division I, which is what we are. We're playing courses that average around 6,200 yards. So a lot of junior tournaments are around 5,800. That's pretty short. And you start playing Division I, and there's a big gap, and it's a big learning curve. So if you can start to play tournaments that are a little bit longer, or courses that are a little bit longer, that would help. And if you have the luxury, obviously, if you can travel to different types of golf courses, whether it's desert golf or areas that are more windy than others. We're fortunate. We live in Southern California. A lot of good players in Southern California, same with Arizona, as you know. But the bad thing about California golfers is they are so used to good conditions. That is actually kind of a con of coming to Cal State Fullerton, as I don't really want to say that, but we have such good weather. We don't have wind. We don't have much rain. And so we're so used to playing in good conditions that it can kind of be a learning curve when we play in bad conditions. Just playing in a lot of tournament golf is going to be the way you're going to get noticed and the way you're going to get the most experience and be ready for Division I golf.
You mentioned like the longer courses and stuff. So if you were looking at two players, one was playing these shorter courses but getting number one or second place versus a player that was playing longer courses, but maybe in the top
Mhm.
5, how
Mhm.
would you decide who would be a better fit for college golf?
Yeah, that's a great question because I've recruited players who had they were shooting under par, and I was really excited about this years ago. In fact, I was excited about this player, and so let me go watch you play. And I watched her play, and the course that she was playing was really short, really receptive, perfect conditions, and I realized like these scores aren't really a good reflection as to how she's going to play at our level. And so that's when it makes a difference to really do the evaluation part of recruiting. Because in many cases, golf is a little bit easier than some sports when it comes to recruiting. Because I can look at scores, I can look at you can send me your golf swing, I can talk to your swing coach, but that's where kind of the rubber meets the road. Is like I need to make sure like how far is she? How far is she able to hit it? Because I do believe that that's kind of the direction of Division One is longer players are
Mhm.
gonna have a huge advantage over kind of the shorter players. Not always. That's definitely not always the case, but that's kind of the direction that you're starting to see it. And another thing you're also seeing if you know have the ability to afford stuff like this, but you know even a personal trainer. A lot of kids are now working out. Now you don't have to hire that, but I do believe that there is a huge advantage to being strong and athletic.
Sure. Well, gosh, it's like the Tiger Woods method. When you hear about his routine that he would have and
Yeah.
how much working out would be factored into his daily
Yeah.
routine, and of course, diet and nutrition, it does make you realize just how powerful it can
Yeah.
be to advance you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add on to that, I just recruited. We just signed 4 players in November because we had a lot of seniors on our team, so we're gonna have a really young team next year. And we had an official visit, which is something that's really exciting. And during that visit, we talked about kind of the expectations as to like this benchmarks as to where they should be when they get here, just to let them know that at least they know where they need to be when they get here, as opposed to where we've had players come in and it took them a whole semester just to get to where they needed to be in the gym, where they're
Mm,
not even lifting the weight or they're not as fast as they should be, like our seniors. So we can advance them to where they need to be so they can kind of, you know, one semester is a long time. If we
mhm.
could mitigate that, that could really, you know, help them in the long run.
Sure. Having that expectation and just kind of like, here's what to prepare for.
Yes, exactly.
When you do the college recruiting, a couple things. Are you ever looking at Instagram pages of students who are posting, or are you just more looking at stats within the state? And then secondly, do you ever really, when you come to watch, do you ever look at their mental state and how they handle tough rounds and holes?
Yeah, those are great questions. The Instagram profile is good. Um, and it definitely gets our attention. You know, I follow a lot of players sometimes they even have 2 Instagram accounts. They have their personal one and they have the golf one. I'm not saying they need to have a golf one. To me that doesn't matter. You know, I do think that it helps with promotions of themselves. It definitely gets our attention as coaches, but really I think what a player should be focusing on is they need to email coaches is kind of how they get our attention. And when they email us, they send us a few videos and then they send us their results. And a lot of times, I'm just being very honest, we don't reply because we have so many emails so we get. And it's so important for that player to not give up and just to keep emailing because sometimes it just gets lost in our inbox. So just send it again. Hey, here's another update. I played another tournament. Here's how I did. Even if it's not good, just send it anyway. And your name keeps popping up on our inbox, we start to notice it a little bit more. So I do want to emphasize that.
Want to touch on, you mentioned just the emails and stuff. So in my background in
Yes.
public relations, I ended up using the term pleasantly persistent
Yeah.
because the same thing when I was trying to pitch media a story and crickets, right? But when you would be
Yes.
persistent in it, and eventually enough times they saw
Yes.
your email or your name, or you would change the subject a little bit, and next thing you know, they're opening and they're booking a media
Yes.
segment. But you don't want to be a pest, right? You don't want to be
Right.
annoying. So I would use
Right.
the word pleasantly persistent. And that
Yes.
usually would get the job done. But my second question on that was, do you, when you go to watch players that you're recruiting, do you watch their mental state, how they handle the tough rounds and tough holes?
Oh, yeah. Actually, that is another main reason why we like to watch the player at tournaments. It's not about looking at their golf swing because most of the time they already sent their golf swing. And to be honest, we already know what they're shooting because they already know we know their scoring average. We know every single tournament they've pretty much ever played in, and we know the results. So I wish recruits would actually know that you don't have to impress us because we already know what you're about. We're actually there to kind of see how are you reacting to maybe your good shots, but also, your bad shots. And in fact, I even say this sometimes, I actually almost prefer to watch them when they're playing bad than when they're playing good, because now I get a real sense of who they are
Yeah.
and what their character is like. Oftentimes, especially when I first start to recruit, like if I'm going out to watch a player, I'll purposely stay behind so they don't know I'm there, just to see like I don't, because the problem of it is if they see us there, two things can happen. One, they get nervous. Oh no, a coach is here to watch me and I'm nervous. Or the opposite, they're on their best behavior, right? Oh, I got to make sure I don't act a certain way. So a lot
Interesting.
of times I'm just kind of staying out, maybe at, 200 yards away, just
Yeah.
watching from a distance. And then
Smart, kind of that
eventually I'll kind
secret
of get
shopper
closer.
thing where you're just in the
Yeah.
you have to be, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a
Yeah.
good point. I never thought about that, two things would happen. They'd either be super nervous and fumble completely or possibly just be on their best behavior knowing you're watching.
Yeah. Sure.
Well,
So,
and I think too, probably just about any student would probably be somewhat nervous knowing that a coach is there and wanting to perform their best. But I guess what you're saying, which is fascinating, is that if you're already going to go watch them, they're pretty much on your list of like someone you are
yes.
interested in because you like their swing, you like their stats. So they've
Hmm.
already passed the first round of, I don't know what you call it, initiation. What do you call it?
Yes.
Recruitment. So
Yes.
when you're actually going, maybe if they can get rid of that mindset of being so nervous to mess up and saying, you
Hmm.
know what, if I mess up, this is my opportunity to show this coach and this
Yes.
school that I can brush it off, I can keep going, that I can turn it
Hmm.
around. And maybe if
Hmm.
that was the mindset they had versus being like, oh my gosh, I have to do my absolute best because they're watching
Yeah.
me.
That's exactly true. That would probably mitigate some of the nerves too for that player realizing, "Oh, I don't have to put on a show for this
Right.
for this."
Or like it's their one shot, like
Yes.
like the Olympics or something. It's their only shot to shine.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, we already know all their stats going in, and that's why we're there. So, there's nothing to prove at
Nice.
that point.
We talked a little bit about just like the next level, but with juniors who are aiming for Division 1, what's a realistic schedule, tournaments, results that they should be? And you work with
Mhm.
girls, so to get at the female level, what would be kind of realistic statistics and or just practice schedule they should be having weekly as a high school student?
Right. So, yeah, if they're in high school, and let me just kind of break it down this way too, because especially if there's a lot of parents watching, they need to understand there are NCAA rules, especially for Division 1, as to when, they can contact coaches and stuff like that. So just to kind of understand what that's like. When you're a freshman and a sophomore, you're not really talking to Division 1 coaches yet. You can email them, but they're not going to be able to reply because we can't have contact with them. It's not until June 15th after their sophomore year when we can start emailing those players. And again, it's funny because in 5 years from now, this might even be obsolete. It's because they always change the rules. But
Right.
as of right now, check the NCAA handbook if you're listening to this in a couple of years. But as of right now, January 2026, wait for June 15th after their sophomore year is when, you can reach out to and have a conversation with
Do you think
with
it's
the
important for students who have like an Instagram account to maybe have their year or their birth date on their title
yes.
or what's, I guess, what grade they're in, just so that, because it's hard to tell
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people put their age, but the age could be irrelevant. It's really about what year they're going to graduate high school. So if you do have an Instagram account, I definitely would say class of whatever
Mm,
the year you're graduating high school. And
okay.
this is also really important to make sure you put your name on your golf bag with maybe class of whatever on it, because sometimes we might be recruiting one player in that group, but then we see another player that's actually pretty good. I'm like, oh, what year is she? Now we're like digging through our papers when really it'd be nice just that if you could have your name on your bag and we maybe see you have a really good golf swing. Oh, what
Mhm.
year is she? Oh, she's
Okay.
a 2028. Well, that's 2 years from now. I'm not even recruiting that class yet.
Yeah.
Or maybe, oh wow, she's on our radar. So
That's
those are
really
really
helpful
big things.
information that I feel like a lot of parents don't know. So this is
Yes,
amazing
absolutely.
information.
No, it helps us so much as coaches. It's so hard to sometimes figure out which player is who. in a group if we're going out to watch unless they have their names on their back. Expectations. So as for our every Division 1 and 2 and 3 are going to have different expectations as to what, results they're looking for. I can tell you that for us, players should be averaging around no more than really 74.5. That's kind of where we're at. A lot of times the way we kind of dictate our scholarship is kind of based off of their results on and off the golf course, their academics, and also their scores, and then their character is kind of pass or fail. I've had players or recruits come in, they're averaging around scratch, really good players. In fact, I've even flown one all the way from the other side of the country, last minute, came to our campus, and this particular recruit was on their phone and just really not engaged, just didn't fit what we were looking for. And we didn't even finish the entire visit. And I said, I think, we're going to call it, we're done. Would you like to go to LAX now or later? Like literally, that's how, and I tell that story to recruits sometimes, not because I'm trying to sound like I'm really tough, but that's something that they should respect because you're so important. You're more important than a number to us. You are somebody, and we are looking for good character. Not all schools can say that. Some schools, all they care about is the number, and they don't care about the character. But what we have found is, in the long run, that player will eventually transfer or cause other issues on the team. No matter, I don't care what they're shooting, will end up being a problem later.
Well, to your point,
So
you
that's
treat
another
it like
thing.
a family, and you call
Yep.
these girls your family, your other children. That it's you're inviting someone new into that world, and you want to make sure, to your point, they're going to have the same values and fit within even the group that you've
Yes.
established.
Yeah. I would say that's the hardest part of recruiting is figuring out if they're the right fit for your program. Because again, figuring out what their score is easy. I can look on that on a computer, and if they have a good golf swing, again, that's going to be something that you can see in a video that they send you. But determining if they're the right character is really difficult, and the way we figure that out is mostly when they're on a visit on campus, is through questions, or if their parents are there, how are they treating their parents. Sometimes that could be a huge red flag too if they're a mom, or something like that. It's like, well, if they're going to do that to their parents, what are they going to do to me later? um I've gotten a lot better at that, and I'm really fortunate. Again, like I have like right now, our team has a good dynamic, and the parents must have done a great job raising them. And so now I have a really good blueprint of what I'm looking for future, recruits and players. So meeting the parents is a big part of the recruiting process because we get to see the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So we get to see what the dynamic is and
Yeah.
how they're raised and how independent they are and that type of thing.
With having so much of the parent involvement with the recruitment process, are there any red flags or green flags, as we call it, for
Sure.
parents that stand out to you that you kind of mentally take note of as you're going through the process of considering their child for a spot on the team?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we're evaluating the player, a lot of times the parents are also either on the golf course watching. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're in the clubhouse and that's fine too. But I think there has to be a good balance. You want a parent who cares about their child and wants them to do well, but there's also sometimes where parents can be a little bit overbearing too, where they're putting more pressure on their child than the child really needs. Maybe, there's some intense mom and dad parents out there who are shaking their head if they're playing bad. And I think I've actually experienced this where that's been a burden later, even when they're in college, is they're fighting for their parents' approval. And so, if I could give parents advice, what I have found that's been very successful with my team at that level, at age 18 to 21 years old, and we also have team goals, and then we have like result goals, stuff that's outcome focused, and then we'll talk about process goals. And so my job as a coach, or in this case, if we're a parent, I just have to keep them accountable for focusing on the process goals. And so therefore now it's not like me telling them, hey, you needed to do this or that. It's like, hey, you said you were going to do that and you're not. And now we kind of shifted this perspective a little bit, and they have more of the ownership than you telling them what to do.
Well, and to your point, as a parent, I mean, there's so much of that in parenting as they get older too, and just holding them accountable. I mean, you can drag them kicking and screaming and say, you're going to do this, and they'll do it, But the question is, are they going to do it when you're not there?
Yeah.
Or are they going to want to follow through on their own goals, practice without you hounding them, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's all about the systems. I mean, like I said, being a mom has been more challenging than honestly being a coach.
same, same.
But it's just it's just difficult because with college at my age, or at least as a coach, I am always getting them from age 18 to 24 or 21, I guess. So it's like you kind of know what to expect and when you know what age they're at, and you're going through the kind of the same struggles every kid kind of has the same. But as a mom, they're constantly changing. So you got a 4-year-old that's having a tantrum, and you got the 1-year-old. Like, how do
Yeah.
I deal with this stuff? So,
Well, and the hardest part too is you're realizing is just when you get the hang of something, a schedule, how they are in this age, it all changes. So
changes again.
you master the age 3 and then now they're 4 and it's starting from scratch, right? It's like literally
Exactly.
each new year is completely different that you can't prepare for. Now with your second kid, maybe by the time she's certain ages, you'll be like, okay, I know what to expect. I know how to
Yes,
handle this.
exactly.
I know how to control myself more. Right? And you think of the
Yeah,
mistakes we
definitely.
make with the
Yeah.
first child, or in my case, I have an only child, so I'm not able to correct my mistakes with anyone else. I just try to give wisdom to other
Yeah.
parents for my own mistakes. But
Right.
yeah, just it's constantly changing. And even now, I have an 8-year-old, and we still have our challenges. And there's days where I'm like, I feel like I'm rocking momhood, and then other days I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing, or there's
Yeah.
attitude or sass, and you see your precious little baby talk back to you,
Mhm.
and you're like, how did
Yeah.
I create this little monster? Or what's really interesting, you might start to realize with your 4-year-old as she gets into be about 5 and 6, is they mirror you, good, bad, and ugly, right?
Yes.
My son, probably around age 6, he would start to roll his eyes a lot with me,
Mhm.
with people he was annoyed at, and I was like, "Why is he doing?" And I remember venting to his dad one day and just being, "I'm so frustrated because to me it's a sign of disrespect, all this stuff." And he's like, "Well, where do you think he gets it from?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." And he's like, "He gets it from you." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"What? Really?"
Yeah.
I mean, I was like so taken aback that it caused me to take such self-reflection of like,
Yeah.
sometimes, in the car, we might not have road rage, but we're like, ugh, in the car.
Mhm.
And in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm not cussing at a driver. I'm not having road rage, but my frustration, he feels it.
Yeah.
And then they model
Yeah.
that. They model the eye roll. They model all this
Yes.
stuff. But as a parent, you're forced to, in your 30s and 40s, like kind of go through this transformation of
Yeah.
who you are, what you want, how
Mhm.
you want to raise your kid, even stuff from your own childhood, good or bad. And
Yeah.
then you can apply that in life to other things as well.
Yeah. Well, and like that's why I think being a mom is so much harder than in many cases than being a coach, because you are on all the time and you have to model it too. With coaching, in all technicality, as much as we do live in a glass box, and I do allow my kid or my players to know, what's going on, but we can take off our coaching hat at times and then put it back on when we go to the golf course, or, we're in the locker room. But you can't really do that as a mom. Like you got to be on all the time. And they're always watching you. So it's like, and the only person to blame when your kid is, yeah, being disrespectful is kind of yourself, because they're the one that's watching you.
So true.
So that's why I feel like being a mom has really helped me become a better coach, because it's just this whole nother accountability factor.
Yes.
I wish some of our coaches would have children just to help them, because you learn a lot. And I was like, yeah, maybe now I kind of get why he said that. So
Yeah.
kind of a funny thing.
Totally. Well, my son's coach is a newish dad, and he's kind of going through it. And there's times too where he's just like, I've been coaching kids for years, and now having my own kid and just things
Yeah.
that he does that I'm like, what the heck? It just helps him understand the parent dynamic relationship even a little more too.
Yes. Yes. And again, like from a recruiting perspective, this is the first year that I've actually had this happen, mostly because I'm recruiting so many players right now, since I have a bunch of seniors. I have 3 out of the 4 recruits. I remember whether it was the player or the parent saying, one of the selling points of coming to Fullerton was because you're a mom. And I almost like it really kind of hit me hard, because if again, 5 years ago when I found out I was pregnant with my first child, I was like, thinking the exact opposite. I'm not going to be as good as a coach, and now if only I could have saw that
Yeah.
image of that parent saying, my mom is really happy that I'm going to Fullerton because, you're a mom and you can understand, you have the nurturing perspective of things. And
Mhm.
it would have given me a little bit more just encouragement.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just it's a really neat thing, a really neat circle that was
it is.
fulfilled.
I love that you said the word nurturing. Because I feel like in this golf journey with my son, there's not always a lot of nurturing that happens. And it's not by anybody's fault. Sometimes it's just the dynamics. Like I see, well, usually I'm one of the very few female caddies out there, and it's mostly dads and sons. And that's just a different relationship
Mhm,
altogether, sports
mhm.
dad, right? So I've made jokes at times that like I feel like I'm in dance moms, but like more intense because it's dads and they're golfers and they want their son to go
Yeah,
pro and they are just riding them so hard. There's a lot of dads who aren't. We've made a lot of friends through this process too, which has been amazing. And I admire a lot of families, but there's also some that I'm like, I can't believe they're talking to their 6-year-old this way. I'm talking about the parents. I mean, the kids
yeah,
are out there crying. And as a mom, there's been times where I've wanted to cry along with these children. And I'm like, oh, do you want a snack? I'm like, and I'm almost in a way jumping in naturally to the mom role, wanting to comfort them because I'm like, they
mhm,
need a little, especially at a young age, they need a little more nurturing. And
yeah,
I just think that can go a long way. And there's something that I think maybe it's just because only something moms can do. And maybe that's why there's not a lot of that in golf because it's so many dads who are the caddies. And not that they're doing a
mm,
bad job, just they don't have that natural instinct. They see their son crying, like, okay, you got this, go to the next one. Whereas a mom, I'm like, do you need a snack? Do you need a potty break? Like, what do you need? Something's wrong. Here, let me give you a hug, right? And that's just a natural mom instinct that dads don't have, but
yeah.
hearing the
Yeah, I can
nurturing
I can
part.
see that. Yeah, I could see that being the case. I mean, every family dynamic is going to be different, but for me, like the nurturing part that has helped me as a coach would be more like just I know my assistant coach will be like, "Man, you have a lot of patience. Like, don't you just want to like get on them?" I'm like that? I'm like that's nothing compared to what my kids do at home. Like it's given me so much more patience
Yeah.
and just to deal with like you're growing like you're
Mhm,
like even though you're an adult you're a young adult and you're still learning
mhm,
this and obviously at some point that's why you have systems like hey if you do this here's
mhm,
the consequence so when you have to lay down the consequence not like hey I'm not doing this you kind of did this to yourself you knew what the rules were you knew the game
mhm,
you know how the game works and this is the consequence and so and what's really neat about the whole having that dynamic is the player who let's say has to pay the consequence for whatever maybe they didn't get their stats done or whatever. They're not even mad at me. They're like, "You're right. I screwed up. Like I should have done that." And so when you're very clear on what the expectations are,
mhm.
you don't have as much emotional issues, I guess.
Yeah, that no, that makes sense. And the fact that, you get them to come to the conclusion that, that it was their own doing. I mean, that's such a huge learning aspect for them that helps with their growth and development to then become
Yeah.
successful adults in whatever they do.
Yes, absolutely. That's the goal of everything is seeing them. And one more thing, I don't mean to keep like going off on tangents, but people used to tell me when I was a coach is like, oh, I do it for when they're older and they have their careers and like how and I always bought into that, but I never really understood that because I was a young coach. I mean,
Mhm,
I'm a millennial and the players I was coaching were millennials. So we're like all millennials. And I'm thinking,
mhm,
okay, yeah, coaching them so that when they become older and in their careers, they become a better person and this and that. But it didn't really dawn on me until actually about a year ago, last February, we were having an alumni event, both men's and women's.
mhm.
And, we get to see them now 10 years later into their careers. And they're still talking about some of just the qualities that they learned while being on the team. And that's just so rewarding when you can see that, like, wow, I actually had a huge impact on that. And then you,
Yeah,
you compound that more and you're like, wow, we actually are making a big difference for
it's
future playing people.
I'm sure that is
Yeah.
very rewarding to see
Yeah.
that
So,
years later. Would you
yeah.
say, Catherine, that the majority of your players on the team, do they have dreams and goals of going pro? Or is that not the end goal? Are they pursuing eventual careers in just different industries or
Mhm.
specialties, or are they all on the track and mindset to want to go pro?
Well, I'm happy to say that I think almost everybody wants to either turn pro or they want to do something in the golf industry. And the reason why I'm excited to say something like that is because that shows me that they really do love the game of golf, right? They're not burnt out by it because we want them to love golf more when they leave than when they come in. The worst thing that happened, and to be honest, when I was just stepping into the head coaching role, maybe even assistant coach, I remember there was players that were saying things like, "Oh, I can't wait for this to be over. I can't wait to graduate. I'm done with golf." And that was just so heartbreaking because you're thinking golf is such a great game, and so now we're actually at the point where not only do I have probably half the graduating class that wants to turn
Mhm.
pro, but we also have the other ones who aren't turning pro. Like, actually, I want to do something in the golf industry. There's just tons of jobs. So
Absolutely. Well,
yeah,
a big
really excited
reason
about it.
on this podcast, I've been interviewing even business owners and people just in the golf space because I want to show and highlight to kids that if you don't go pro, it's not the end of the world. There are a million jobs. You could even be a coach
Hmm.
for college. I mean, there's so many
Yes.
incredible careers and jobs that have you in the golf industry, still on a golf course every day and not walking away from at all. And not to mention, I mean, as you know, probably, I mean, going pro doesn't always rainbows and sunshine, right?
It's
There can be
not.
a lot of hard roads too. So just going pro doesn't equal automatic success or a life of happiness. So I think
Hmm.
showcasing all these different careers, and I love hearing that your students are interested in careers in golf. That's
Yes, we're excited about that as well.
nice. Now, before we kind of wrap up here, what is, well, and also, Catherine, if there's anything I haven't touched on that I could ask you a question about, but kind of
Mhm.
my last question for you is one piece of advice that you would give junior golfers and their families to prepare for college.
Right?
Maybe I should rephrase the
I
question.
think, yeah, go ahead if you want to rephrase it, but yeah.
No, go ahead, jump in, because then I can cut all this part out.
Yeah, well, my piece of advice for junior players is to make sure to have fun doing this. Obviously, like there has to be a balance between you can't just have fun and not care. I think it's golf is a very competitive sport,
Mhm.
and they're probably playing because they like to compete, and it's fun to win, of course. But to make sure that you're enjoying it, because I do believe that, and this we see this even at the highest level, is if they're not having fun, they generally won't play well. So you kind of have to figure out ways to keep it light at times and then get after it other times as well. And I think that's going to meet that the parents will have to play some part in that as well, as making sure that this goes back to keeping them true to their goals and what they want to achieve out of it versus having that extrinsic motivation where the parents are dragging them. You
Right.
kind of want them to be able to be in control of what they want to do and then just keep them accountable for that.
Excellent, excellent points. One last question that I actually just thought of is how do you manage any kind of, I guess, awkward dynamics, competition, or just players not getting along? How do you manage that, or have you
Mm.
managed it in the past?
Yeah, golf is an interesting sport because it's an individual sport, but we play as a team. So we're expected to be a team player, but then we're also expected to kind of compete against each other at the same time. And oftentimes we have 8 players on the team, but we only travel with 5. So we have to have a qualifier. And I remember back when I first coached, and even when I was on the team, really, there was a little bit of this unhealthy dynamic where there's more dog eat dog. And one of the ways that we've kind of mitigated having that more team environment is just setting values. And I'm going to say a real quick story because this was a big game changer in my coaching career. In 2020, as many people, they struggled with mental health, and it was really difficult to have a good, healthy team, like as far as just the culture, because nobody could be around each other. We were doing Zooms, and it was no surprise that our culture started to kind of fall apart. And I remember sitting with my mentor, who he's such a great guy, and he's helping me with a lot of my leadership skills. And I said, our dynamic is just terrible right now. And he goes, "Well, what's your values? Like, do you have a mission statement? Do you have a set of values?" I go, "Yeah, I do." I'm like, "I have these amazing set of values, 5 values." And he goes, "Well, what are they?" And I go, "Well, I made this amazing website and I have them all right there. Let me show you." And he's like, "You don't know them, like off the top of your head?" And I remember we were sitting at lunch at Panera Bread. We were sitting outside, and I remember almost sinking into my seat that day and thinking, I'm the leader of this team and I don't even know the values to our program. And I made a kind of a promise to myself that I'll never let that happen again. And I ended up showing him our values and we talked about it. But he says, if you're not talking about these values regularly and you're not keeping them accountable for them, uh, you can't expect them to even uphold them. And one of those values is selflessness, which, we have all ownership, accountability, pursuing excellence. But selflessness is kind of the one that we talk about when it comes to having a good culture, is just checking up on your teammate and seeing how they're doing, because it's so easy to get in your own little bubble and worry about yourself,
Right.
especially in golf. And that's kind of how we are able to kind of help with the culture, is just keeping those 5 values in our forefront. And that's kind of what the biggest game changer that has happened in the last 5 years for our team.
Thank you for sharing. That's pretty profound. I think, just to your point, how can I expect them to do X, Y, and Z when I don't even have it memorized, right? So,
Yes.
and the same goes
Yeah.
as being a mom, right? How can we expect our kids to, for example, pick up their room if I just threw my stuff down when I get home and didn't pick up, and put my shoes there, and I expect them to
You're
put it
right.
away,
Sure.
right? So it's
Yes.
modeling by example as a coach
Yes.
in motherhood and life, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Kathryn, I've really enjoyed our chat, and I truly feel like we're just two friends sitting across from each other. I wish that we could actually meet in person for coffee, but
Yeah.
for our guests that are listening and watching, what is the best way they can find you, learn about Cal State Fullerton? Please tell us that, which we'll of course have in the show notes, but if you want to just say for our audience.
The best way to just see what we're doing and keep up to date with our news would be through our Instagram. Our handle is Fullerton W Golf. That's for our golf team. And then my personal one is at Coach_Hosch.
Thank you so much. And to everyone who is listening, watching, please share this with another parent. Share this with your student athlete, because Kathryn has so much wonderful information in this podcast if they are looking to go the college route. And with that, we'll see you all in the next episode.